Hey, what's going on? It's Serge here again. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to be making a 2 graphics card rig. We have one Asus ROG GTX 1060 6GB, and we have one EVGA GTX 1060 6GB. And the longer one, the Asus ROG one, has Samsung memory, and the EVGA GTX 1060 6GB has Micron. I'm going to go through the rest of the parts as we go into building this thing, and this video is supposed to be so much cooler. I was supposed to build it actually live with a live commentary, but not everything worked with my camera, so I'm gonna have to record this after the fact. But anyway, let's get right into building a 2-card rig, which will be expanded 4 more cards with another motherboard that I'll throw on there. I'll get into that later. Okay, so here is the wooden frame that I bought off of Amazon for a mining rig. It was about $60, like I said, and I just mounted the 2 graphics cards on there with the risers already. And I have 4 fans up there in the front that I just kind of stuck on there. There were some extra fans I had laying around. And I stuck on that piece of plywood there with the wooden pads on there so I could stick on 2 motherboards and evenly space them from the wood so nothing catches on fire. And here's one of the recycled motherboards that I'm using from an old PC. And it has 2 PCIe slots. And now I know this case will be able to support 6 cards, and I have another recycled motherboard with 2 PCIe slots, but my plan is to buy a splitter for a PCIe riser to like 4 of them, as you can see on the screen. I don't know if this old AMD CPU is actually going to be able to support like 6 cards or so, but it's kind of an experiment, and if it doesn't work, I'll let the internet know so that you don't try it yourself. Okay, so as you can see, I'm going to grab this motherboard actually and stick it onto the first set of pads. And as you can see, it'll be a perfect fit. I measured this out and everything. It perfectly fits onto those pads that I put down to separate it from the board, and one more board will fit here. But I have no use for the other board right now because I don't have another graphics card, so I'll just leave it alone for now. Okay, so let's start at the power supply. For this build, I'm going to be using a server power supply. As you can see, it has a bunch of PCIes on there, and I just put some electrical grease on the server power supply. And then I applied the breakout board with a little bit of force, and then that was ready to go. And I'll show you how I'm going to power everything on this PC with just PCIe power in a second. Now I'm going to show you what a Pico Psu is. As you can see, it's a 24-pin motherboard cable, and it leads over to this other type of cable that I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, I have a converter that converts that little circular port into a 6-pin PCIe, so I'm going to just go ahead and plug that into the Pico, and then the other side of that cable leads into a PCIe, so I'm able to power motherboard 24-pin power with a PCIe slot, so that removes the need for an ATX style power supply. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that into the motherboard, apply a little bit of force, and don't make sure you don't crack your board or anything. Give your motherboard some support, and then it leads over to 6-pin, and then I'm just going to go ahead and try and cable management a little, just push the little cable back a little bit, and then plug in to the first PCIe slot on the server power supply. Okay, so now you might want to know how I power the CPU. So that little header I just showed you on the screen plugs into the Pico Psu, and then I can get additional things powered. So the Pico will power the power supply, and then it has a little extension cord which will actually lead over to a 4-pin CPU cable, and then it'll also give you an additional Molex, and then it'll also give you 3 SATAs. Well, I wouldn't just like power a bunch of things off the Pico because it's only rated for 180 watts. But, you know, you might be able to power the motherboard, the CPU, maybe a fan or 2, and the hard drive. That's what I power on the Pico. I just try and stuff as many things onto the Pico as possible so that I can save a little bit on power without plugging in extra cables. Okay, so out of those 4 fans in the front of the case, one of them is actually powered by Molex. And since the Pico Psu actually has one Molex connection, I'm just going to go ahead and plug that one fan that I have that has Molex, and I'm just going to plug it into the Pico to power that one. The rest of the fans are just motherboard fan headers, and that's not a big deal, so I'm just going to go ahead and power those. And the 2 on the right that are actually not near any graphics cards, I'm not going to power those from now, because why would I waste power on fans that are not cooling anything? So the way I got these graphics cards mounted is in that little thin piece of wood on the top. I just drilled through the wood where the nail would go or the screw would go, and I put the motherboard up there, and then I put the screw in, and then the pre-drilled hole that I got made it really easy to screw in the screw. So that's how I got those graphics cards up in there, and they're very secure and tight, and they're already on their risers. Here's one of the risers right here. It's version 006C, and they have a little clip there on the end to hold it in place. It has USB 3.0 and a 6-pin power connection, and that's very important because since this is going all off a server, I want everything to be powered with 6-pin because that's the only connection I have, right? Pico Psu gives me like a few Molex and a few SATAs, but I really don't want to power everything on the Pico. I want everything to go just through the server PSU, so it's important for this build if you're doing server to get the 6-pin risers. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the red cable, the red USB cables, plug it into the riser as so, and once I plug in the USB into the riser, the other end leads to a PCIe little dongle there. So as you can see, it's USB on the other side, but then you plug in this little PCI to USB thing, and that goes right into the motherboard. Okay, so now we're going to power the graphics cards with the server PSU. Now these cables with the 6-pin to 8-pin connections come with the server PSU, and one of my cards has an 8-pin, which is the longer one, and the shorter EVGA one has a 6-pin. And I would be able to use the splitter, but since one of the cards is 8-pin, I'm not going to be able to use that. And I'm just going to have to stick in this one to one of the cards, and then one of the other cards is just going to use the 6-pin to 8-pin, but I'm only going to use 6 of the pins. So I'm just plugging in the cable now into one of the slots on the server power supply. And on this particular cable, I'm just going to run it under the card a little bit to cable manage, and I'm just going to take all 8 of the pins and stick it into the Asus ROG edition of the GTX 1066GB, and it's kind of hard to stick those 8 pins together because they're not directly connected, but once you get it in there, it is powered. Before we power the other card, I'm just going to quickly grab another one of these 6 to 8 pin cards, and I'm just going to plug in one end into this server PSU, and I'm just going to take 6 of the pins into that splitter we had before, and this is actually going to make it so that we can use one PCIe cable to power 2 risers. And since these risers are not going to be taking more than 200 watts each, I can power just with one cable 2 risers, which will save on cables and make cable management a lot easier. And now I just plug in one end into this riser, and then the other one's kind of hard to reach, but I can plug it into that one, and each riser will be powered perfectly fine with just one cable and the splitter. Now what I'm going to grab is just a simple power switch for any PC, and it just has a button on one side and then 2 pin on the other side, and you just got to find on the motherboard where it tells you to plug in a power switch, and this way you'll be able to turn your computer or mining rig on and off super simply. Here is the storage I'm going to be using. It's 250GB hard drive. Now I know SSDs are usually what people go for in mining rigs because they're low power and it'll use less electricity, but there is definitely an SSD shortage in the world, and they're super expensive. But I just think that I'm just going to help out everyone who's trying to get computer parts and just go with the regular hard drive. I know it'll take extra power, but I don't know how much it is, and I don't want to spend extra on an SSD to find out. Maybe I'll get an SSD in the future, but for now, these hard drives are super cheap, and I think they will be better for me. Now, I think there might be some confusion out there on how server PSUs work with like a standard build like this and not powering a server. So as soon as you plug it in, as you can see on the screen, a little orange light pops up, and that is just telling you that it's off. As you can see, the LED where it tells you how many volts it's currently has is off. So this is in the off state, but it is kind of making a little bit of noise, and there's a power switch on there that will power it on. So I've just plugged it into the wall, and it's taking like 4 watts from the wall just from existing. So if you want to save a little bit extra power and you're not using your computer at the moment, you could just not plug in the computer at all, and you'll save some money there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and power it on. I'm going to push that little button. As you can see, then it says I'm going to get 12.5 volts into this thing. Now, as long as it says 12 point something, you're usually safe. If it's in the higher 12s, I don't know exactly what it means, but it does. I know it means it's not good. Okay, so now I'm going to hit the power button, and everything should be getting power, but nothing's yet powered on. Now I hit the button, the CPU fan kicks up, those fans kick up, and then all you got to do now is plug in a Ethernet cable, install your OS of choice, and that would be it for your mining rig, and then you can just start mining. And I'm not going to go over software side on this video, maybe I'll do it some other time, but I generally go for Windows because Windows is just, it's free. Even if you don't have the key, it'll let you use it infinitely forever. It just has a little logo at the bottom right saying to activate Windows. It's just free Windows basically, but it'll just have that little watermark at the bottom right forever, which is pretty cool, I think. If you just want to get free Windows, you just don't activate it, and it won't ever force you to activate it ever or delay it or anything. So yeah, that's it for this video. I have a few more cards that'll fit on there, as you could see, and I have another motherboard that will be able to support that, and I'm going to actually try a PCIe splitter in a future video when I get some more cards. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.